In the warm Florida afternoon, a quietly moving scene often unfolds. Jack Nicklaus, the greatest legend in golf history, now 85 years old, walks slowly across the soft grass, hand in hand with Barbara, his wife, of over 6 decades. They are no longer the glamorous couple of their youth, no longer surrounded by flashing cameras and the cheers of thousands, but their smiles remain gentle, their eyes still shining with a strange, warm light, a light that can only come from hearts that have weathered life's highs and lows together. Behind them lies not just hundreds of trophies and millions of fans, but a legacy of compassion, the Nicklaus Children's Hospitals, where thousands of young lives have been saved, where love has replaced applause. It's hard to believe that behind the sports icon who once captivated the world is a rare love story, a journey spanning over 65 years, woven with glory and tragedy, tears and smiles, and an unwavering faith. Barbara is not just the wife behind the legendary man. She is his soul, his anchor, the quiet hands that lifted him when he fell, the guiding light in the years he was lost amid fame and loss. If Jack Nicklaus is the golden bear, a symbol of strength and indomitable will, then Barbara is the warm heart that kept that bear from turning to stone. Together, they walked through the most dazzling years of American sports, through long nights of loss, and now stand at the end of the road, calmly holding hands as if all the glory is now just a distant memory. The story of Jack and Barbara is not just a tale of two people, but a testament to something simple yet profound. A legend is not only forged on the golf course, but in the heart of the woman who carried him through every pain. Their love story began simply in the autumn of 1957 at Ohio State University, where red leaves fell on the pathways and church bells echoed across the campus. Jack, then 17, a tall, blonde-haired, bright-eyed but awkward young man, had just joined the school's golf team with dreams still taking shape. Barbara, 16, petite and intelligent, had a gentle smile that seemed to warm everything around her. They met at a student gathering, where Jack, more comfortable with golf clubs and fairways, stood clumsily by the buffet table, unsure how to start a conversation. Barbara noticed his awkwardness, smiled softly, and that smile made the young man's heart skip a beat for the first time. Their first date wasn't the stuff of movies. Jack took Barbara to a small music venue near campus. He wore a slightly wrinkled shirt, spoke haltingly, while Barbara listened quietly, occasionally smiling at his attempts to hide his shyness. As they left, he didn't dare hold her hand, only mumbling, "I'll play better next time." Barbara laughed, puzzled by how this boy could tie everything to golf, but perhaps it was that awkward sincerity that convinced her there was a warm, honest heart behind his calm exterior. Their love grew gently and naturally, like breathing. Jack became more confident, but to Barbara, he remained the same boy who blushed when complimenting her beauty. Despite the demands of student life, they found time for each other, sometimes just afternoons by Mirror Lake, talking about the future and dreams that were still hazy visions. Barbara spoke of wanting a warm family, while Jack said he wanted to be the world's greatest golfer. Two different dreams, but both rooted in the same thing: endurance, faith, and love. Barbara's father, Basil Bash, didn't hide his concern when he saw his daughter smitten with the young athlete. One evening he told her, "He's an athlete that means your life will be full of waiting, full of long absences. Are you sure you're strong enough for that?" Barbara paused, then replied softly but firmly, "If anyone can conquer the world, it's him, and I want to be there when he does." It wasn't a romantic vow, but a quiet belief, a silent promise to stand by him, no matter how far the road stretched. When Jack began competing as an amateur, Barbara was the first in the stands, cheering. In the years that followed, as his career took its first shaky steps, she remained by his side, encouraging him even when he doubted himself. They got engaged in 1959, and a year later, on the 23rd of July 1960, they married in Columbus, Ohio. The wedding was simple, not extravagant, with no press flashbulbs, just friends, family, and genuine smiles. During the ceremony, Jack held his wife's hand and whispered, "I can't promise you an easy life, but I promise to take you with me on every journey." That simple vow became the compass for their 60 years of marriage, a love tested by time, by long separations, by loss, and by the aches of old age. No one could have imagined that this youthful union would become one of America's greatest love stories, where a sports legend and an ordinary woman together wrote an anthem of loyalty, sacrifice, and a love that time could not conquer. The early years of Jack and Barbara's marriage were a time when they had to learn to love through distance, to nurture trust amid scarcity and uncertainty. In the early 1960 seconds, Jack Nicklaus was just starting his professional career with no stable income. The meager prize money from small tournaments barely covered their newlywed life. They rented a small apartment in Columbus, its walls so thin Barbara could hear the wind slip through the cracks each night. Pregnant with their first child, Jack Jr., she faced morning sickness while managing the household alone. Jack, meanwhile, was constantly away, traveling from one tournament to another, chasing a name in the ruthless competitive world of golf. Barbara later recalled that in their first year, she rarely slept through the night, kept awake by a crying baby and the loneliness that filled the empty room. Each morning, she wrote letters to her husband, sharing small details, meals, the weather, a shirt he'd forgotten as if he were right there. Jack kept those letters, reading them on long flights, the only way he could feel his family during months away. Barbara, watching Jack on TV, felt pride mixed with quiet sorrow. She knew he was chasing a grand dream, one that meant she had to step back. On winter nights, with the house dark, Barbara sat alone, cradling her child, listening to the wind howl outside, tears falling. She didn't blame Jack. She just felt the emptiness, then wiped her tears, smiling at her child as if reassuring herself, "I'm okay. I'll be okay." Jack, though far away, carried guilt in his heart. His letters always ended with the same promise, "I'll make it up to you." It was a vow he never forgot, even if it took a lifetime to fulfill. Whenever possible, he called Barbara, stealing a few minutes between tournament breaks. She never complained. She understood each swing Jack took was a step toward their shared future, and if that path was lonely, it was a loneliness she was willing to share. Life was tough, but their love endured. They lived frugally, no maids, no fancy cars. Jack sent nearly all his prize money home. Barbara managed every penny carefully. She cooked, sewed, and never grumbled despite their hardships. When Jack returned, their small apartment glowed with laughter and simple, warm meals. "We had nothing but love and faith in each other," she said. And somehow, that was enough. Those years saw Jack's first victories, but success didn't come overnight. Some tournaments ended in crushing defeat, with silent flights home heavy with disappointment. Each time, Barbara was at the door, embracing him without a word. That embrace gave Jack the strength to keep going. Amid poverty and distance, their love grew not from romantic vows, but from quiet sacrifices, from Barbara's lonely nights waiting, and from Jack's lifelong promise, "I'll make it up to you." In those years of struggle, loneliness, and steadfast faith, the foundation of their legendary marriage was built not on fame or wealth, but on loyalty and resilience. Later, as Jack became the Golden Bear, basking in global spotlight, Barbara still remembered those early days, the small apartment, the long nights, and that simple promise. For it was in those seemingly small moments that they learned to love as true companions, not as a legend and his shadow. And that love, through all its storms, remained a light that never faded in their hearts. Jack Nicklaus's victory at the 1962 U.S. Open turned him from a promising talent into a global phenomenon. At 22, defeating Arnold Palmer, America's Idol, on his home course at Oakmont, he sent the golf world into a frenzy. The press hailed him as a winning machine, the heir to Palmer's throne, with his face plastered on magazine covers. But in a quiet corner of Columbus, Barbara, the young wife, sat before a black and white TV, holding her child, hearing the announcer shout her husband's name amid endless applause. For her, each of Jack's victories stirred pride and a piercing loneliness. Their lives entered a new chapter. Jack's schedule grew relentless, spanning the U.S., Europe, and Asia, with weeks or months away from home. Barbara became the golf wife, quietly managing the family, raising their children, and keeping the home intact. The world called him the Golden Bear, a symbol of strength and glory, but few spoke of the woman behind him, who sat at a warm dinner table each night, waiting for a man she knew wouldn't make it home. Jack wrote to Barbara almost weekly, his letters short, his strong handwriting hiding a rare tenderness. He described drives, rain at Pebble Beach, cheering crowds, always ending with, "I wish you were here." Those words tethered their two worlds, one of applause and flashbulbs, the other of diapers, dinners, and solitude in a small home. Though proud of Jack's career, Barbara faced the reality that his fame pushed her further away. He was the public's focus, pursued everywhere, while she faded into the background, the shadow behind the glory. At events, people asked how she felt about Jack's wins, but rarely if she was tired or lonely. She'd smile, saying simply, "I'm proud of him," then go home, slip off her shoes, sigh, and resume her routine as if the outside world didn't exist. Sometimes, Barbara joined Jack at major tournaments, but even there, she felt on the sidelines. Amid roaring crowds, she stood at the edge of the stands, clutching her hat, watching her husband make a shot the crowd called programmed perfection. When Jack lifted the trophy, the course erupted, but Barbara quietly wiped tears. No one understood that feeling pride mixed with a heartache too deep to name. Each swing was proof of his genius, but also a step further from their small family world. In later interviews, Barbara admitted there were years she nearly forgot who she was. Everyone talked about Jack Nicklaus. "I was just Jack Nicklaus's wife." The words held no resentment, only the stark truth of loving a great man. She knew her role was to stand behind him, and she accepted it. But sometimes, deep down, she wished someone saw the woman who kept the legend from falling. Jack, despite his hectic life, tried to preserve their fragile bond. After each season, he rushed home to play with the kids and spend an evening with Barbara. No golf, no press, no noise. He'd take her to dinner, talk about tournaments, then hold her hand in silence. In those fleeting moments, they reclaimed the peace lost to the whirlwind of fame. Barbara knew Jack never chose golf over family. He was just balancing a dream too big with a love too deep. That made her love him more, made her more patient. She accepted being the woman behind the wall of glory, as long as that wall had a door through which her husband, no matter how far he went, always returned. And amid the flashbulbs, the cheers, the anthems echoing across America, there was a woman sitting quietly in the back row, watching her man climb the podium not just out of pride, but because of a love big enough to endure both its light and its shadows. While the world saw Jack Nicklaus as a towering hero of American sports, behind the curtain of that glory, 5 children grew up with a father who was often only present on TV screens or in old photos tucked in a wallet. The Nicklaus family, Jack Jr., Steve, Nan, Gary, and Michael, each carried a piece of the Golden Bear's legacy, but also the cost of a man's rise to legend. In the 1,960 seconds and 1,970 seconds, as Jack competed week after week on different courses, Barbara was the one at home, raising their brood. She was not just a mother, but also a father, the keeper of discipline and love in a home missing its man. Jack Jr. later recalled, "Our childhood was full of Dad on TV wearing yellow, holding trophies, smiling, but we only had him for a few weeks a year." Barbara once said in an interview, "He was barely there for their childhood, but strangely, the kids still idolized him. When Jack came home, even for a few days, the house lit up. The kids clambered onto his lap, while Barbara watched with a smile tinged with joy and sorrow. Jack carried photos of his children in his wallet, keeping them close during tournaments. In high-pressure moments, he'd look at those tiny faces, a ritual for calm. "I could be far from home," he said, "but my heart never left them." Yet time apart left its mark. The kids grew up with a father more absent than present. Barbara witnessed their first steps and words, while Jack heard about them over the phone or in rushed letters. When he returned, he brought gifts and joy, but also the awkwardness of a man who knew he'd missed precious years. Once Steve, the second child, asked his mother, "When will Dad stay home like other dads?" Barbara gently ruffled his hair and said, "He's working for your future." Somehow, the kids understood. Though absent, Jack tried to be present in his own way. Before big tournaments, he'd call his children, saying firmly, "Study hard. Don't give up." He led by example, not words. When Gary, the fourth child, took up golf, Jack didn't coach or push, only saying, "If you love golf, play with your heart, not for the name Nicklaus." His strictness could create distance, but it also taught the kids that his love was in the faith he placed in them. Barbara later shared that those years were the family's greatest test. Some dinners lacked Jack, but she always spoke of his victories as if he were there. The kids needed to know what their father was doing and why he deserved respect, she said. She kept Jack's image alive in their minds, and perhaps because of that, their bond with him never broke. As the children grew, they understood the cost of glory. Jack Jr. and Gary pursued golf. Steve worked in sports business. Nan and Michael joined community projects. Each took a different path, but all carried their father's traits: discipline, honesty, and resolve. In later years, after Jack retired, the family reunited more often. Quiet dinners in Florida, filled with laughter, were a belated balm for years of separation. Jack often said he was never a perfect father, but he was lucky to have children forgiving enough to understand he did his best. "I miss their childhood moments, but now I'm living to make up for it," he once told an interviewer. Barbara, who saw it all, just smiled. He kept his promise. The father-child bond in the Nicklaus family is not loud, not expressed through hugs or sweet words, but enduring like the flow of time, sometimes quiet, sometimes fierce, yet always moving in the same direction. As Jack entered his later years, his children often accompanied him to events, helping him onto stages, smiling for the press, while Barbara stood in the background, seeing in their eyes the pride she had nurtured for half a century. They were not just the children of the Golden Bear, but the continuation of a legacy built not on titles, but on love, sacrifice, and the resilience of a family that walked together through glory and darkness. Throughout the years of triumph and separation, Barbara Nicklaus remained the silent pillar, the keeper of the family's flame, while everything around her revolved around one man's spotlight. In rare interviews, when asked the secret to sustaining a marriage amid fame and loneliness, she would only smile and repeat the phrase that became the emblem of their love. "Jack promised he wouldn't be gone more than 2 weeks. I don't count the days, I count the love." The words sound light, but they carry a lifetime of waiting and sacrifice. In reality, 2 weeks often stretched longer, sometimes to 3, 4, or even a month, but Barbara never complained. She understood that the promise wasn't about time, but a reassurance from the heart that no matter where he was, Jack was always thinking of her and would always return. When he came home mid-season, even for just a few days, Barbara prepared everything meticulously down to the smallest detail. She cooked Jack's favorite meal-grilled steak with mashed potatoes, a familiar taste that made him feel as if he'd never left. She hid her exhaustion, never mentioning the sleepless nights or the days spent raising their children alone. When Jack walked through the door, Barbara greeted him with a smile, not a single word of grievance. Perhaps because she knew the world out there was harsh enough, and this home needed to be his one place of peace. To Jack, Barbara was not just a wife, but a steadfast foundation, the one who kept him standing through the storms of fame. Yet no one can live a lifetime on sacrifice alone. Some nights, when the children were asleep, Barbara sat alone before the TV, watching her husband's face flicker in the dim light of the living room. She saw Jack standing among thousands of fans, his smile radiant, the cheers deafening, and somewhere deep inside, a quiet void bloomed. She knew he was happy in his moment of victory, but in that light, she didn't exist. As the camera panned to Jack's face, Barbara would unconsciously reach out to touch the screen, a gesture to bridge the thousands of miles between them. And then tears would fall, not from anger, but from longing. Jack once said Barbara was the strongest woman he'd ever met, but her strength came not from toughness, but from patience and a love that asked for nothing in return. She never envied the stage, never resented golf, the thing that took so much of her husband's time. "It's his mission," she would say, her voice calm but full of understanding. That statement was not just acceptance, but faith that the path Jack walked, no matter how far, would always lead back to the home where she waited. Barbara knew that love wasn't always dazzling. It could be the silence between two people who understood each other too well. The brief hand-holding before he left for the airport, the act of cooking dinner for an empty chair, or the glance at the TV screen each time he lifted a trophy. She didn't need expensive gifts or public praise. For Barbara, happiness was hearing Jack's warm voice on the phone. "I'm coming home soon." In later years, when their children were grown, Barbara admitted there were times she felt weary, times she wondered, does anyone truly see me, the woman who spent a lifetime behind that light? But then she'd smile, because the answer lay in her own heart. She didn't need the world's gratitude, only Jack's knowledge that she was always there, and he knew it. In every triumph Jack achieved, Barbara was the one absent from the frame. Yet the reason he never lost his way. When he won, she smiled quietly. When he lost, she stood there, asking no questions, offering no analysis, just resting a hand on his shoulder. And as he aged, Barbara became a living memory, the place he returned to, the proof of a love that needed no fanfare to be seen. In the world of golf, they called Jack the Golden Bear, but without Barbara, that bear would have lost its shelter, its warm heart amid the cold forest of fame. She was the one who kept the promise, even if it could never be fully kept. And in every slow step Jack took later in life, each time he turned to look at his wife, his eyes said it all. Barbara was his greatest victory, a victory without a medal, but named love. In 1986, at 46 in age, when most golfers had hung up their clubs or faded into obscurity, the world believed the Golden Bear had passed his prime. The press wrote that he was too old, lacked the reflexes, the strength, that the Nicklaus era was over. But in their small Florida home, one woman didn't believe it. Barbara looked at her husband with the same eyes as in the beginning, eyes of absolute trust. As Jack prepared to head to Augusta for the Masters, she held his hand and said simply, "Fight like the first day you picked up a club." It wasn't just encouragement, but a reminder of who he once was, the brave, relentless Ohio boy who never accepted limits. That week, the world witnessed the impossible. In the first 3 rounds, Jack played quietly, unnoticed. But in the final round, he erupted. Decisive swings, perfect putts, each shot tearing through doubt. When he scored a birdie at the 9th, then an eagle at the 15th, the grandstands exploded. Augusta roared, and as his final putt rolled into the 18th hole, thousands stood, cheering a miracle rare in sports. At 46, Jack Nicklaus won his 6th green jacket, a victory that defied logic and time itself. Amid the crowd, Barbara sat quietly in the stands, hands clasped tightly. When the final shot landed, she broke into tears, tears that held everything: pride, relief, and a love beyond words. She knew better than anyone what Jack had fought, not just younger rivals, but doubt, physical pain, and the fear of being forgotten. In that moment, she saw not just a champion, but the husband she had believed in her whole life. But when the spotlights dimmed, the crowds dispersed, and the cheers faded, Barbara also knew that victory was not just a pinnacle, but a farewell. She knew Jack, the man who refused to age, would face a void greater than any defeat, the emptiness of a legend who had reached his final summit. While the world called it the miracle at Augusta, Barbara quietly told her husband that night, "You did what no one else could. But you know, this might be the last." Jack was silent, then nodded slightly. He knew she was right. In the days that followed, Barbara watched her husband in the glow of TV lights, smiling, speaking to audiences, but in that smile, she saw a hint of emptiness. The man who lived to fight had now conquered everything, and all that remained was the quiet of a soul learning to step away from glory. Barbara didn't rejoice as fully as the world, for she understood the other side of victory, where elation melts into silence, where the chill of approaching old age begins to creep in. Years later, Jack still called the 1,986 Masters the happiest day of my life, but Barbara called it the day I cried for joy and for knowing I was losing a part of Jack. From that day, their lives turned to a new chapter of slow mornings, aching backs, the ticking of clocks, and quiet afternoons in their Florida home. Glory had reached its peak, and what remained was a void only love could fill. In 2005, as Jack Nicklaus stepped away from the big stage and began enjoying quiet years with family, fate dealt him and Barbara a devastating blow, a strike that felled even a legend. On a calm summer afternoon in Florida, the news hit: Jake Walter Nicklaus, their 7-month-old grandson, son of their second child, Steve, had drowned in a hot tub at home. The accident happened in mere minutes. The family plunged into chaos. When Jack heard the news over the phone, he froze, the cup in his hand falling to the floor. Barbara collapsed on the spot. No screams, no tears, just a numbing shock. The man who had competed in hundreds of tournaments, stayed calm before thousands, could not stand against the pain of losing a tiny life bearing the Nicklaus name. Jake had been the family's greatest joy. Each time Jack returned from a trip, the toddler would run to him, arms outstretched. "That boy had an angel's smile," Jack once said. "Every time he laughed, my fatigue vanished." Now, seeing Jake's toy car still on the rug, Jack's eyes blurred with tears. Barbara couldn't speak. She, who had seen her husband through countless losses, physical pain, and media rumors, was no longer his anchor. They held each other in their empty home, and for the first time, the golden bear didn't roar, he trembled. Jake's death was not just a family tragedy. It was a knife cutting deep into hearts that thought they knew loss. Barbara said through tears, "I saw he was no longer the golden bear, but a broken grandfather." Those words captured Jack, then not a sports icon, not a symbol of strength, but a man shattered by grief. The world had admired him for timeless shots, but no shot could shield him from this reality. St. Andrews, the home of golf, where Jack won 2 Open championships, was preparing for its 2005 tournament, his declared final appearance there. Though his heart still bled, he chose to play, for golf was the only language that could express his emotions. Before leaving, he held Barbara's hand, his voice hoarse. "I'm playing this one for Jake." She didn't reply, only nodded and placed her hand on his chest, where his heart pounded as if it might break. When Jack appeared at St. Andrews, tens of thousands stood to greet him. But amid the applause, something was different. They weren't just cheering a legend, but a man in pain who still stood tall. In the final round, as his shot crossed the Swilcan Bridge, Jack paused, turned, and waved to the crowd. His smile brought thousands to tears. He later said, "My last shot wasn't for glory, but for my grandson." That moment became iconic, not just for closing a legendary career, but as a grandfather's humane farewell to a boy forever 17 months old. In the months that followed, Jack barely left home. He declined interviews, canceled events, and spent most of his time with Barbara. The aging couple sat in silence, knowing no words could fill the void Jake left. But in that unbearable pain, a small light emerged. Barbara, always the family's heart, was the first to find strength. She told her husband, "If we can't save Jake, let's save other children." Those words roused Jack from his paralysis. From there, they embarked on a new journey, turning loss into hope. Thus, the Nicklaus Children's Healthcare Foundation was born, a charity Jack and Barbara founded to support pediatric healthcare across America. They started with golf fundraisers named the Jake Pro-Am, where every swing, every cheer honored the boy they lost. For Jack, each smile from a saved child brought Jake back in their eyes, their breath, their continued lives. "I can't change the past," Jack said, "but I can help other kids have a future." Barbara recalled that since the foundation's start, Jack seemed to reclaim a piece of his lost soul. He poured his heart into the projects, visiting hospitals, meeting children. The Golden Bear appeared again not on fairways, but in hospital corridors, holding hands with children fighting for life. Each smile, handshake, and donation was a new shot, a shot for Jake. But Barbara knew that, despite turning pain into action, the wound would always bleed. Some nights, I'd see him sitting alone in his study, staring at Jake's photo, his hand trembling on the frame, she said. He didn't cry, just looked, but I knew he was talking to him in his own way. From their life's worst tragedy, Jack and Barbara created a miracle. They turned pain into a legacy of compassion. Yet deep down, they carried an unfillable void. Jake's death stole the last of their innocence, but it also gave them a new mission to live for others. And perhaps that was the Golden Bear's greatest shot, one that drew no applause, but echoed forever in the hearts of those who know that sometimes the greatest victory is rising from loss with love. From the ashes of tragedy, a new flame was kindled, a flame of compassion. After Jake's death, Jack and Barbara spent months in quiet grief. They spoke little, stayed home, and let the pain flow through long days. But one afternoon, Barbara looked at her husband and said in a hoarse voice, "If we can't save Jake, let's save other children. That's how he'll live on." Those words pierced the fog of despair, awakening something deep in Jack, the meaning of living on. In 2005, the Nicklaus Children's Healthcare Foundation was born, carrying not just their name, but the soul of the grandson they lost. From the start, Jack and Barbara set the foundation's goal not to build image or fame, but to turn pain into action, ensuring no other family endured their kind of loss. Jack said at the launch, "If one child can be saved because of us, Jake is still alive in this world." The foundation began small, with a few staff and modest fundraisers. But within years, fueled by the Nicklaus name and the love it inspired, it spread across America. Each year, the foundation hosts the Jake Pro-Am, a golf fundraiser in memory of their grandson. It quickly became an annual gathering for top golfers, business leaders, and fans eager to join the mission of love. Every swing in the Jake carries a prayer for Jake and for children battling illness. Barbara is always there each season, sitting quietly in the front row, eyes following her husband. When Jack speaks, his voice is low but steady. "Jake is why we keep going. We don't play for victory, but for life." The foundation's success drew partnerships with leading healthcare organizations. Its collaboration with Miami Children's Hospital marked a turning point. Nicklaus Children's Health System centers sprang up across Florida. Thousands of children received free or low-cost treatment, surgeries, cardiac care, respiratory support, and rehabilitation. Barbara said that each time she entered a hospital room and saw a child smile after a successful surgery, she felt something sacred. "I believe Jake lives in every breath of the children we save." Jack, once defined by golf clubs and applause, found new purpose in the laughter of sick children. He spent most of his remaining time visiting centers, meeting doctors, shaking hands with kids, and hearing families' stories. When asked why he pressed on despite frail health, he smiled. "Because every child who survives feels like winning another Masters." It was no longer a sports career, it was a spiritual mission, where compassion replaced ambition. Barbara is the heart of the foundation. She oversees numerous projects, secures funding, and works directly with hospitals, doctors, and donors. Despite her age, She attends every meeting, always reminding everyone, we're not just saving lives, we're preserving hope for parents. Her dedication has earned widespread admiration. A doctor once said, if Jack is the one who inspires, Barbara is the one who keeps that flame alive. In the years that followed, the Nicklaus Foundation grew beyond expectations. They built additional rehabilitation centers, mobile pediatric emergency units, and funded hundreds of scholarships for medical students. The foundation raises hundreds of millions of dollars annually, but what makes Jack and Barbara proud isn't the numbers, it's the stories they witness. Once, at a gathering, a young couple brought their child, who had just undergone heart surgery, to thank them. The father gripped Jack's hand, tears streaming. Without your hospital, our daughter wouldn't be here. Jack squeezed his hand back, replying softly, no, thank you for giving us the chance to meet her. Every Christmas, Jack and Barbara returned to the centers, handing out gifts to the young patients. His back hunched, his steps slow. Jack still patiently signs every ball, poses for photos with each child. In those moments, people see the gentle light in the golden bear's faded eyes. He's no longer the towering man with a golden club, but a kind old man, quietly sowing hope into small lives. Barbara once said, when we lost Jake, I thought my life stopped too, but now I know he's still here, in every breath of the children we save. That statement moved all of America. In an era of fame and materialism, the Nicklaus couple proved that true greatness lies not in records, but in turning pain into compassion. Now, when people mention Nicklaus Children's Hospital, it's not just a hospital's name, but a symbol of love, the love of two people who lost everything, yet found a reason to carry on. In every hospital corridor, you can feel Jake's breath, hear Barbara's laughter, and see Jack's silhouette gently holding a patient's hand. The Golden Bear's name once adorned every golf course, but his greatest legacy lies in the hearts of children who don't know who he is, only that because of him, they're still alive. And Barbara, the woman who guided him through glory and loss, still believes that somewhere Jake is smiling. In a final interview before an American audience, she said, love doesn't die. It just changes form, and our little boy has become the light guiding thousands of other small souls. As the foundation stabilized and thousands of children were saved, Jack and Barbara entered another chapter of life, one of frailty, old age, and illness. The Golden Bear's body, after decades of battling on every course, finally demanded its toll. The powerful swings of yesteryear left heavy scars, a worn spine, swollen knees, persistent shoulder pain, and eyes clouded from years under harsh sunlight. Chronic back pain often kept him from standing long. Mornings took nearly half an hour just to get out of bed. Some nights, sharp pain woke him, drenched in sweat, and Barbara, accustomed to his quiet groans, would sit up silently, place a hand on his shoulder, rub gently, and whisper, "You don't have to fight alone anymore." Now she became his hands and feet. Every daily task, moving, exercising, or rare public appearances, had Barbara by his side. When Jack was invited to Masters ceremonies, audiences saw a familiar sight: a silver-haired old man, hunched, hands trembling as he held his club, with a white-haired woman guiding his steps on the green. Each time he bent to tee off, Barbara stood behind, eyes following, as if ready to catch him if he fell. That image moved audiences more than any victory. Amid applause mixed with tears, they saw not just a sports legend, but the power of love, a force that transcended time, fame, and the body's limits. When Jack's back pain worsened, he sought stem cell therapy in Germany, a hopeful but risky treatment. Barbara accompanied him throughout. She sat beside him on the long flight, her hand never leaving his trembling one, her eyes never straying from his weary face. In the German hospital, she was the only one who could make Jack smile. Each morning, she helped him sit up, tucked his blanket, shared news from the foundation about saved children, reminding him his life still had purpose. As the doctor administered the first injection, Jack gripped his wife's hand, And Barbara whispered, "You fought for the world once. Now I'm fighting to keep you standing." Those words brought tears to the medical team, not just as encouragement, but as the vow of a love that had endured half a century. In those years, their love was no longer passionate embraces or hurried airport kisses of youth. It became a quiet companionship, a harmony needing no words. Barbara reminded Jack to take his pills, checked his blood pressure, took notes for him at foundation meetings, supported him on stages, and sat silently beside him through sleepless nights. "Our love doesn't need romance anymore," she once said in an interview. "It just needs presence." Jack knew he was fortunate. In rare interviews, he always mentioned Barbara first. "People think I'm strong," he said, "but she's the one who keeps me upright." At 85, he no longer fought the world but time. And Barbara, who once turned the loss of their grandson into light, now turned old age into a gentle journey of care and love. Some afternoons, Barbara wheeled Jack to the balcony, where the Florida breeze rustled through palm trees. They sat silently, listening to distant waves. Jack placed his hand on hers, squeezing lightly. In that moment, physical pain seemed to dissolve. "I've traveled the world," Barbara said softly. "Now let me take you the rest of the way." Jack nodded, smiling the smile of a man who knew that in a changing world, one love never betrayed him. Their love in old age was no longer a story of glory or victory. It was a story of steadfastness, of two people who held hands at the peak, and still did in sickness and frailty. Looking back, Jack said, "I was lucky to win at golf, but my greatest luck was having Barbara fight with me to the end." For Barbara, that victory had no trophy, no audience, but was the deepest triumph, a steadfast heart that never let go. Over 60 years have passed since Jack and Barbara held hands in a small Columbus, Ohio church, vowing to walk through life together. Those 6 decades held not just glory, but illness, loss, lonely nights, and the quiet aches of old age. Yet when asked the secret to their enduring love, they both smiled and said, "Love isn't the absence of pain, it's enduring it together." The words sound simple, but they were the red thread of their lives, two souls bound not by glorious years, but by shared trials. Now, with the spotlight of fame faded, the most iconic images of them are not Jack hoisting the Augusta green jacket, but Barbara guiding him slowly across the Masters grass. She stays close, holding his arm, her eyes full of tenderness. People no longer see the mighty golden bear, but a silver-haired man, trembling with his club, supported by the woman who walked with him through life. That image spread across America, called by millions the most beautiful symbol of aging with grace. In an era of flash and vanity, they proved true beauty lies not in youth or fame, but in love and loyalty. Barbara still brews Jack's morning tea, checks his meds, and sits with him on the porch watching the sunrise. She speaks softly, recalling old memories. His first U.S. Open win, the 3 weeks she waited during a season, or the night they wept for Jake. Each story is told calmly, not for nostalgia, but to remind them they survived it all and are still here. Jack, though his eyes are dim and hearing faint, listens like a child. Sometimes he doesn't respond right away, just smiles, gripping her hand tightly. To him, words are unnecessary. Her touch says he understands. He's still grateful. The American press, when mentioning them, calls Barbara the quiet strength of Jack Nicklaus. While the world sees Jack as a symbol of talent and discipline, Barbara is the one who balanced the man and his fame. She's not just his caretaker, but the mirror reflecting his best self. When asked what he owes Barbara most, Jack answered without hesitation, "Everything. I could lose it all, but without Barbara, I wouldn't be me." Old age brought challenges. Some days, Jack is too weak to hold a glass. Some nights, Barbara stays awake as he shifts in pain. But instead of complaining, they make each day a memory, however small. In a home interview, Barbara said, "Every morning I see Jack still there, smiling at me. I know it's a good day." Jack chuckled, adding, I don't know if heaven's as beautiful as her smile. Frail health keeps Jack off the course, but he still attends foundation events. And always, Barbara is there. She helps him to podiums, adjusts his mic when his hands shake, and smiles when he pauses, forgetting words. She whispers cues, helping him finish. That's their communication after 60 years, needing no words, just eyes and breath. They've faced it all, prying media, illness, friends' deaths, and unrelenting pain. But they didn't let it defeat them. Instead, they saw it as life's inevitable part, a life where love is the foundation. In a 2022 interview, Barbara said, "We're not perfect. We've argued, been exhausted, cried. But each time, I learned love isn't perfect harmony, it's choosing to stay, even when it's hard." Now, seeing them together, Jack moving slowly, Barbara guiding each step, no one thinks of records or titles. They see two souls fused in life's longest journey, loving and keeping promises. Time has silvered their hair, but not dimmed their eyes. And when Jack looks at Barbara, it's still the look of the awkward Ohio boy from 1957, a man who found his soulmate and never let go. As golf's glory fades, what keeps Jack Nicklaus's name alive isn't his 18 majors or legendary swings, but another legacy: compassion. At an age when most retire, Jack and Barbara embarked on a new journey, sowing love. Thousands of children saved, hundreds of families spared tragedy, hospitals built, all bear the mark of the Nicklaus Children's Healthcare Foundation, born from the loss of Jake, nurtured by love and empathy. At foundation events, Jack is no longer a sports titan, but a silver-haired man smiling kindly, bending to talk with children recovering from surgery. He says little, just holds their hands and asks, "Feeling better?" Barbara stands beside him, her eyes shining at their smiles that, to her, are Jake living on. Every hospital, every new medical center, carries that story. No longer just a legend's name, Nicklaus is now a symbol of humanitarianism in American sports, where glory and compassion merge. The American media dubbed them the first couple of compassion. Articles and TV specials hail them as models of using fame for community good, turning personal success into collective benefit. When asked about it, Jack just smiled. "I don't think I'm doing anything grand. I just want kids to live another day." That simple statement moved millions, embodying a rare humanity in a world that often celebrates only victory. In 2015, the U.S. Congress awarded Jack and Barbara the Congressional Gold Medal, America's highest civilian honor. The ceremony at the Capitol was met with applause from senators, athletes, and hundreds of guests. As the Speaker of the House announced the award, he said, "Jack Nicklaus didn't just change golf, he changed the meaning of legacy. His legacy is measured not in records, but in lives." Stepping to the podium, Jack stood beside Barbara. His posture stooped, hands trembling with age, but his voice was warm and steady. He didn't speak of himself, his trophies, or named courses, but said one line that hushed the room: "Everything good I have comes from Barbara." Then he turned to his wife, the woman who stood by him through every triumph and loss, and gently took her hand. That grasp held over 60 years of love, of enduring and building together. Barbara bowed her head, eyes glistening, as the room stood to applaud not just for a legend, but for a great love. Since that ceremony, Jack and Barbara's image has deepened in America's heart. They're no longer just the golf couple, but symbols of grace and goodness. Schools, sports organizations, even politicians cite them when speaking of leadership with heart. Jack still talks to students, urging that true success isn't standing on podiums, but using your hands to lift others up. Barbara, as always, chooses quiet. She rarely grants solo interviews, appearing only with Jack. Asked about the prestigious medal, she said, "We didn't do it for honors, we did it for Jake, and for every child like him." Then she smiled the gentle smile America has known beside Jack for over half a century. Age hasn't stopped them. Even with declining health, Jack visits new medical centers. Barbara calls doctors, checks on projects. They don't manage like executives, but like grandparents to thousands of children. "We want to be there," Barbara said, "so the kids know they're loved." Looking back, Jack's proudest moments aren't records or titles. He once said, "When I leave this world, I don't want to be remembered for 18 majors. I want people to know Barbara, and I tried to do something good for others." That, perhaps, is what makes his legacy boundless. In a sports world where glory often overshadows humanity, Jack and Barbara Nicklaus wrote a rare chapter where love, compassion, and steadfastness became an eternal symbol. They're proof not only that marriage can outlast fame, but that true success isn't in how many cheer you, but in how many live better because of you. And so, when people speak of the Golden Bear, they don't just see the image of a sports legend, but a man who turned his entire life into a journey of saving and loving alongside the only woman he ever loved, and will love until his final breath. After all the triumphs, losses, and the long journey of over 8 decades, Jack Nicklaus and Barbara now live in a peaceful Florida home, where morning sunlight filters through palm trees, where sea breezes blow gently, and everything seems to slow down, allowing them to savor the rest of their lives together. Each morning, Jack wakes early, leaning on his cane to reach the backyard, where Barbara already sits with 2 steaming cups of tea and her familiar smile. They watch the sunrise together, needing few words, for after over 60 years, their silence has become its own language. As sunlight bathes their small garden, Barbara gently helps her husband stand, guiding him along the stone path he calls "my own fairway." He walks slowly, hand in hand with his wife, his clouded eyes still glowing with warmth. "I'm lucky to still have you," Jack often says, his voice trembling but sincere. And Barbara, as always, smiles and responds with a gentle squeeze of his hand, as if to say, "We're both lucky to still have each other." Age 85 has brought Jack many limits. He can no longer swing a club as he once did. His eyes are dim, his hearing fades, his back is hunched, his steps slow, but he has never lost his serenity. Barbara cares for him meticulously, as she did when they were newlyweds. She checks his medications, prepares meals per the doctor's orders, and is always there when he needs her. Though her hands are weaker now, she still loves cooking herself, because, as she says with a light laugh, "Jack never liked anyone else's food more than mine." Sometimes, their children and grandchildren visit, bringing laughter and small golf games in the backyard. Jack sits in his chair, eyes following each swing of his grandkids, occasionally clapping weakly but joyfully. He is no longer the golden bear who conquered the world, but a gentle grandfather, content to see his legacy live on through generations. Barbara says her greatest happiness isn't in titles or glory, but in mornings like these brewing tea, seeing Jack smile, and holding hands as they walk the garden. "People say time takes everything," she says, "but to me, time only makes love clearer." When she looks at her husband, she doesn't see a frail old man, but the Ohio boy from long ago, the one who clumsily asked her to a concert, who sent short but heartfelt letters from around the world, who whispered at their 1960 wedding, "I'll take you with me on every journey." 60 years later, that promise remains unbroken, though the journey now circles a small seaside garden. Sometimes, Barbara opens an old album, its black and white photos yellowed. Jack in his first golf outfit, her in a simple wedding dress, their tiny children beside their father. Jack looks, smiles, and says softly, "We've come a long way." Barbara nods, resting a hand on his shoulder. Some evenings, as they sit on the porch listening to crickets, Jack says slowly, "If I go tomorrow, I just want people to know I loved you and the kids completely." Barbara listens, tears rolling down her cheeks, but doesn't reply, for she knows that love has been clear in everything he's done throughout his life. Jack's old friends, many now gone, make him feel like the last survivor, he often tells Barbara. But instead of sadness, she gently reminds him, They may have gone ahead, but your memory lives in their hearts. That makes Jack smile, knowing that though his body weakens, the love and compassion they've sown across America continues to bloom. Neighbors sometimes catch sight of the elderly couple walking hand in hand along the path to the lake. No longer the legendary pair applauded by crowds, they are now just two ordinary people walking through the twilight of life. And perhaps in that simplicity, they find the deepest meaning of happiness. No flashbulbs, no cheering crowds, just someone to guide them through their final slow steps. When asked about his final wish, Jack says simply, "I don't need anything more. I have Barbara, family, and peace." To him, it's not just a statement, but the truth, the culmination of a life of struggle, love, and gratitude. And Barbara, hearing this, leans her head on his shoulder, her eyes gazing at the lake shimmering in the sunset. In that moment, time seems to pause, leaving only two people who have crossed life's peaks and valleys, still holding hands as they did on the first day. For in the end, all glory fades, but love endures, and in that tranquil Florida home, that love still breathes, still lives, like the gentle light of the setting Sunday. Time, ever unyielding, has taken Jack Nicklaus's physical strength, agility, sharp gaze, and the swings that once left the world breathless. But it could not touch one thing. The fire within him and Barbara is the one who keeps that fire alive. At 85, the Golden Bear is a broken-winged warrior, living slowly, wearily, but with eyes still holding the light of one who has known glory and the true value of life. When he sits quietly on the porch, his gaze drifting to distant courses of the past, Barbara sits beside him, a hand on his shoulder, softly recounting, "Remember Pebble Beach in 1972? That drive over 300 yards, the whole grandstand chanting your name." Jack smiles, his clouded eyes flickering with a spark. Sometimes she continues, "And Masters 1986 when the world thought you were done, but you showed your heart still had fire." Each story she tells isn't just a memory, but a way to rekindle his strength, reminding him he lived, fought, loved. Barbara knows Jack better than anyone. She knows his long silences mean his back pain is gnawing. She knows his slight headshake hides frustration at his body's betrayal. And she knows that though he says little, he carries guilt for becoming a burden. But Barbara never looks at him with pity. She sees a weary hero, and her task is to help him rest in peace. "You fought for the world your whole life," she once said. "Now let me fight to keep your fire alive." On days when Jack is weaker, she tells more stories. Not just about golf, but their life. Their first date at Ohio State, the years in their tiny apartment, the nights she sat alone watching him on TV, the fateful day in 2005 when Jake left them. Each time he listens, Jack's tears fall not from regret, but because he knows all of it, painful or joyful, shaped who he is today. Barbara says, "Telling the past isn't to live in it, but to remember how far we've come." In spring 2023, the world witnessed an unforgettable moment. At the Honorary Masters, where golf legends are celebrated, Jack Nicklaus, despite his failing health, was invited to hit the ceremonial first shot. America held its breath for the moment. That morning, Barbara helped him into his jacket, slowly buttoning each one, wiping a tear as she saw him hide the trembling in his hands. "You okay?" she asked softly. Jack nodded, smiling, "As long as you're there." As the car brought him to Augusta, thousands lined the entrance, holding flags and signs reading, "Thank you, Jack." Barbara helped him out, his left hand on his cane, his right gripping hers tightly. Each step was a battle between body and memory. In the grandstands, many wept. They no longer saw the mighty Golden Bear of old, but an old man striving to walk with all the pride he had left. Beside him, the white-haired woman moved steadily, her eyes never leaving her husband. At the tee box, a breeze stirred the green trees. Barbara stepped back half a pace, eyes wet but smiling. Jack set the ball down, hands shaking as he gripped the club. He looked up at Augusta's sky one last time, then swung. The ball didn't travel far, just a few dozen yards, but the sound of that shot echoed across the course. In that moment, the grandstands rose. Applause thundering, many unable to hold back tears. No one clapped for the shot's distance, but for a lifetime's journey, for a warrior with broken wings who refused to fall, and for the woman who guided him through it all. Jack stood still, watching the ball roll slowly on the grass, then turned back. Barbara stepped forward, taking his hand. He whispered, "This shot was ours." She smiled, tears falling. That image was captured, spreading worldwide, a photo of two elderly people holding hands amid thousands' applause. The press called it the moment that made the world cry. But for Barbara, it was just another day in their life, a day she did what she'd done for 60 years, stood by Jack. In the car back to the hotel, Jack gazed out at the yellow and green flags fluttering in the evening Sunday. He said softly, "It's strange, I thought I had no tears left, but seeing the crowd stand like that, I cried." Barbara smiled. "They weren't just honoring you, Jack. They were honoring this love, a love that's walked with America for over half a century." In the months that followed, the photo of Barbara guiding Jack at the Masters was displayed in sports museums, aired on TV, and hailed as a symbol of graceful aging. Magazines wrote, "If Nicklaus's glory was golf, his legacy is Barbara." And perhaps they were right, for as strength, fame, and memory fade, the only thing left is the light from that woman, the light keeping Jack's fire burning to the end. Now, when Jack is weary, Barbara tells stories, not to recall past glory, but to remind him how he lived. "You did great things," she says, "but the most beautiful thing you did was never give up on golf, on life, on me." Jack stays silent, tears falling, then takes her hand, whispering, "You're why I never gave up." Their love story, after over 60 years, has transcended the personal. It's become a symbol for a generation of Americans, one that endured war, triumphs, fame, and pain, yet held on to what matters most, love. Seeing Jack and Barbara together, people see America itself, strong yet compassionate, resilient yet tearful, always finding light in the darkest years. For Jack, life holds no new trophies or victories, but he remains a warrior, and Barbara remains his firekeeper. They live slowly, love slowly, but more deeply than ever. Each evening, as the sunset falls over the golf course before their home, golden light bathes their silver hair. Barbara takes her husband's hand, whispering, "We've had a beautiful life, haven't we?" Jack smiles, voice hoarse, "A life I wouldn't trade for anything." And in that sunset glow, the image of two people holding hands, warrior and firekeeper, becomes an immortal symbol, not just a legend's farewell, but an eternal anthem of love, loyalty, and the strength of two hearts that lit a century together. As the sunset stretches across the golf course before their home, the last rays illuminate the lush green grass, and two figures walk slowly side by side, Jack Nicklaus and Barbara. They no longer hurry, no longer chase achievements or fame. The world out there still moves, still remembers the Golden Bear as an immortal legend. But in that moment, all titles, trophies, and statues pale before the quiet peace of two people who have loved through a lifetime. Each of Jack's steps is heavy but sure. Each grasp of Barbara's hand is gentle but steadfast. They have walked through every season of life, from the radiant light of youth to the dark pain of loss, and now to the golden glow of serenity. In those afternoons, they no longer talk of golf or the victories etched in history. Jack doesn't mention his 18 majors. Barbara doesn't speak of days behind the grandstand fences. Instead, they talk of family, their 5 grown children now building their own lives, the grandchildren chattering in the backyard, and Jake, the grandson who left too soon but lives on in their heartbeats. As the breeze blows, Barbara whispers, "I think Jake's smiling somewhere." Jack nods, gripping her hand tighter. He knows everything good they've done in the past 20 years, from the hospitals bearing their name to the thousands of young lives saved, is a way to keep Jake present in the form of compassion. They still visit Nicklaus Children's Hospital each year. They sit on stone benches in the corridors, watching children run about, parents smiling in relief after storms of illness. Jack says little, just gazes at them with kind eyes. A boy, saved by heart surgery, once approached, grasping his wrinkled hand. "Thank you, sir, because without your hospital, I wouldn't be here." Jack smiled faintly, patting the boy's head. "No, thank you for reminding us life is still beautiful." At 85, that gratitude is a greater prize than any trophy he ever won. For Barbara, the simplest joy is brewing Jack's morning tea, reading old letters in the afternoon. Among them are lines Jack wrote in 1962, after his first U.S. Open win. "I'll do everything to make you proud." Now rereading them, she smiles. "You did it, Jack. But what makes me proudest isn't the victories. It's how you kept a kind heart through it all." Their love, after over 60 years, is no longer the blazing fire of youth, but a smoldering, gentle light, enough to illuminate a lifetime. Some evenings, Jack sits quietly, eyes fixed on a framed photo, him holding Jake, the toddler's radiant smile blending with his proud grandfather's. "I think of him every day," he says, "but instead of sadness, I feel gratitude. Because of him, I learned what it means to live for others." Barbara sits beside him, resting her head on his shoulder, whispering, "And because of him, we learned how strong love can be." Those words, light as the breeze, are deep as a prayer. Sometimes, old friends or reporters ask Jack the familiar question, "What are you proudest of in life?" He doesn't hesitate. "Being loved by Barbara, having our family, and seeing kids get a chance to live because we lost one." That answer silences listeners, for it's not just a legend's philosophy, but the reflection of a man who has scaled every peak and plumbed every depth. One afternoon, as the sunset stretched through Florida's palm trees, Jack and Barbara walked the lawn together. The wind, birds, and distant waves blended into a familiar melody. Jack paused, gazing at the golden sky, saying slowly, "I used to think glory would last forever, but I realized it fades too. Only love doesn't." Barbara nodded gently, her eyes shining with quiet faith. "Because of love, you lived fully, and because of love, we'll always stay." In that moment, the sunset glowed, its final light reflecting on their silver hair, merging their silhouettes into one, a living monument to fidelity, compassion, and faith. There, they were no longer the golden bear and the legend's wife, just Jack and Barbara, two ordinary people who loved, endured, and walked through life's every upheaval. Their story is not just theirs, but part of America's history, a history of resilience, enduring love in a changing world. As the world forgets the 18 majors or the legendary Augusta swing, the image of a silver-haired man leaning on a cane, guided by his white-haired wife in Florida's Twilight, will endure. It's not just an image of an ending, but of another beginning, the beginning of immortality in humanity's heart. And then, as night falls in their seaside home, Jack takes Barbara's hand, his eyes gentle, whispering, "If I'm gone tomorrow, remember I loved you more than anything in this world." Barbara answers with a quiet smile, then leans on his shoulder. Outside, the breeze stirs the palms, waves lap the shore, as if time itself whispers that the truest things never fade. Glory may fade, but love endures. And in that final sunlight, two aging figures walk slowly, the old golden bear and his gentle wife. They move toward the sunset, hands clasped, eyes still bright, a testament to a love that never bowed to time, an eternal legacy that will be told forever, not in sports history, but in the hearts of those who believe that love, when deep enough, can make the immortal.